He's been beating the drums for quite a while now. Trump has, from the Oval Office on 7 March. He thundered that the time is running out and we're going to make a deal. And he said if we don't get the deal that we're looking for, there's going to be bombing, and all this stuff. Then he kind of ameliorated and seemed to actually talk a little bit more when, ironically, Benjamin Netanyahu was sitting in the Oval Office with him, and he says, yeah, let's talk and we'll have a negotiation, et cetera. So he sent Steve Witkoff over. Witkoff comes in immediately after that meeting and sounds kind of upbeat.
The conversation with the Iranians will be much about 2 critical points. One, enrichment. As you mentioned, they do not need to enrich past 3.67%. In some circumstances, they're at 60%. In other circumstances, 20%. That cannot be. And you do not need to run, as they claim, a civil nuclear program where you're enriching past 3.67%. Verification will be the key point that undergirds this agreement if we're fortunate enough to get there. And we're going to have very tight verification.
Now, he took a lot of heat from saying that because a lot they're on the right in the conservative, even on Fox News, even some who are big supporters of Trump. They said, no, there can't be any percent. I think I saw Rebecca Heinrichs actually sent out on X post, vehemently distancing herself from that. And then it seemed that Witkoff walked it back the next day. And now he's like saying, actually, no, there can be none. So first of all, what actually is America's intent here?
Well, the which part of America? The part that's owned by the Zionists, or those of us who are actually true patriots? I'd say for those of us who are true patriots, the absolute deal with Iran should be cut, and Iran's not building a nuclear weapon. We've got that because they signed that agreement on January 17th with Russia, comprehensive strategic cooperation, and one of the articles, 47 articles, one of those articles specifically addressed non-proliferation. Russia's working with Iran on non-proliferation, which means Russia's not going to allow Iran to produce a nuke. Iran itself says it's not producing it. But the U.S. position, when Donald Trump walked away from the JCPOA during his first term, he was insisting that they walked away because, A, it still allowed Iran to have a missile force. They got to get rid of the missile force. It allowed them to have a peaceful nuclear energy. No, we got to get rid of that too. And then they got to cut off all support, all contact with Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. That was what Trump gave us the reasons back then. Now, the hope we got out of Saturday was, Witkoff conceded that Iran can continue a peaceful nuclear program. Now, he's wrong about the 20%, getting rid of the 20%. Iran's not going to let that go because that 20% enriched uranium is used to produce medical treatments and isotopes and other things that are used for treating cancer. So it has a legitimate, peaceful purpose. And I'm sure Iran, with the backing of Russia and China, will say, sure, you want to come in, you can even post permanent inspectors here if you want. We've got nothing to hide anymore. But, I wrote about this, after, Witkoff came out. And I said, you can come back and present this to Trump, and then the Zionist counterattack's going to start, which it has. And they're going to say, no, it can't have any nukes. The nukes are just an excuse. That's not what this issue is really about. This is about destroying Iran, getting rid of a government that is now seen as favorable and friendly to Russia. And until they're out, until the Shah, the descendants of the Shah are reinstalled in power, we're not going to be happy. That's why while I hold out some hope that there can be a positive outcome come Saturday with the renewed negotiations, I think the reality is the negotiations will collapse because of the U.S. intransigence and the U.S. demands that Iran commit suicide. The Libyan option that Netanyahu talked about.
That's not, about the worst example that anyone could ever raise if you want the other side to actually follow it. The Libya model, where for those who may not know, Libya gave up its nuclear weapons program to the Bush administration to great fanfare. And then afterwards, we came in with Obama and bombed and then ended up killing Gaddafi in the streets. Not the method you want to go down here. But not being optimistic towards what's coming in this Saturday was something that State Department spokeswoman Tammy Bruce said yesterday.
Our goal remains clear. In the words of Ambassador Witkoff, quote, a deal with Iran will only be completed if it is a Trump deal. Any final arrangement must set a framework for peace, stability, and prosperity in the Middle East, meaning that Iran must stop and eliminate its nuclear enrichment and weaponization program. It is imperative for the world that we create a tough yet fair deal that will endure, and that is what President Trump has asked me to do.
Now, one of the things that really jumped out at me a lot about that was not just that they can't have any reprocessing capacity, but that he said he will only agree to this if it's a Trump deal. That sounds to me like what you just feared, that we're basically asking Iran to surrender.
Yeah. Well, and part of it's like, I'll say, Danny, I'm not going to appear on your show anymore unless you stop driving a Lamborghini. And you're going to go,
I don't have a Lamborghini.
Yeah, exactly. How can you stop driving something you don't have? Well, how can Iran stop building something it's not building? You know, that we're setting up a straw man here. And Iran, you know, I think as a result of the negotiations and talks with China and Russia, Iran came prepared and said, look, we will suspend all enrichment above 20%, and we will allow open inspection. And we won't put a time limit on this because we're serious about getting a peace deal. Trump's not going to take it. They're going
to. I can see where them agreeing to that too, because that works. That doesn't cause him any problem. It doesn't cause him to lose any sovereignty or anything else. But what about the missile component? Because that seems to me to be one of the other biggest sticking points, that Iran is not just going to surrender the one thing it has that can be deterrent to any would-be adversaries, especially in Israel.
Yeah, no, they're not giving that up. Period. They're not going to disarm. And they saw what happened to Muammar Gaddafi when he disarmed, trusted the promises of the West. Okay, well, you'll be our buddy now. Just give up all those weapon systems that you used to have. He did. And then we had him killed, and killed in a very gruesome way. So, you know, other people in the region, they watched that. They saw that. It wasn't hidden. So, you know, Iran's not going to agree to that. And if Trump is, Trump right now needs a victory, because he's losing on all fronts. You know, he's not getting the deal done in Ukraine. He's going to blow this deal up with Iran, and now he's started a tariff war with China that he can't win, that he's going to lose, and lose badly. And he will have set the house on fire, calculating maybe that, okay, he can try to rebuild starting in January of 2026 before the midterms. They'll have 10 months to put lipstick on the pig. But, you know, he's really right now, he's making every bad strategic decision he could possibly make.
And listen, getting into a war with Iran, as I think you and I have discussed on many occasions, is going to be far worse than the disaster when we went to war in Iraq in 2003. Yes. And we can talk about that separately. But here's my big worry, is that there are forces that are really starting to coalesce around that was the same thing that helped lead up to the support for a war in Iraq in 2003. And especially we'll go to Brother Jack Keane.
Oh, yes.
Obviously, the ultimatum that President Trump has issued to them, which is if you don't dismantle the program, then something bad is going to happen. You're likely going to be bombed. These are his words. And what that really means is an Israeli-led, U.S.-supported airstrike, most likely. So here comes Iran. And I am stunned by these guys, Martha, because they have a playbook that they opened up again, and it's to replay the negotiations they did with Obama in 2013 that led to the disastrous 2015 deal. What am I talking about? They're saying, look it, we'll reduce all the highly enriched uranium we have down to a very low percentage like we had back in the so-called nuclear deal, the JCPOA. In other words, we're not going to build a nuclear weapon. We're just going to use it for civilian commercial nuclear power. Of course, that's a bold-faced lie.
Yeah, you talk about what's a bold-faced lie. The exact opposite is the case there. He said, oh, yeah, they'll pull out that old playbook they did in 2015 where they said that we'll only reprocess up to this level, except that's exactly what they did. They never took it to the other side, to the nuclear weapons side. They actually limited themselves, which they did, and they gave up a lot in return, fissile material and certain other constraints. We had the UN inspectors, et cetera. They did nearly everything that they agreed to, and we did almost none of the stuff that we agreed to before Trump finally withdrew. Right,
and it was when Trump withdrew that then Iran, they did some processing up to 60%, but you got to get to 90% to do nuclear weapons. So it's one of those things. It's an irritant to the West, but this Jack Keane, he hasn't gotten one damn thing correct, whether he's talking about Ukraine or Yemen or now Iran, even China. Give him a subject, he'll get it wrong. He's reliable in that regard. But this notion that, we're going to waltz in there and we're going to bomb those Iranian sites, and man, they'll never see anything like it. We have launched.
And by the way, I'm sorry. I want to ask you your view on something here, because a separate comment that Keane made a couple of days ago was that, hey, if the Iran's paying any attention, they'll see what. No, I'm sorry. This wasn't Keane. This was, I think it was Secretary of Defense Hegseth. He said, if Iran's paying attention, they'll see what we've done to the Houthis, and that's nothing compared to what we'll do to them. What do you say to that?
I said, let's pay attention to what we've done to the Houthis. We've run 500 bombing raids since March 15th. And in the last 2 weeks, the Houthis have shot down 4 of our Predator drones, the MQ-9 Reaper. Those go between 30, let's call it 35 million apiece. So they've shot down close to $700 million total of Predators since the start of this Operation Prosperity Guardian. Despite our 500 bombing runs, the Houthis are still launching missiles and have still got the Red Sea shut down. So, the other countries are paying attention. And they're saying, United States talks a good game, but man, they can't put the ball in the hoop. They can't deliver what they threaten. And I guarantee you, look at what we're struggling against the Houthis, who don't have a massive air defense system. They don't have an air force with fixed wing combat aircraft. They don't have helicopters. They don't have a space program. They don't have a navy. And they don't really have an army.
He did say earlier this week that I think it's off. You tell me what you understand to be the truth. He said that because of that last Israeli attack into Iran in 2024, that they had knocked out all of their air defense systems and they're basically invulnerable. And now then Israel and the U.S. can basically fly in with impunity and just decimate these bombing the nuclear facilities. Is that accurate?
No, it's a lie. It's male bovine excrement, as Ray McGovern calls it. There's independent evidence to prove that they're lying. One of these American video bloggers who was he was traveling through Iran back then, and I happened to watch his channel, and it wasn't at all political. He wasn't the kid was as disconnected from politics as he could possibly be. He was all about dealing with people and checking out the local food and seeing the tourist sites. He was in Tehran on October 27th when Israel launched its retaliatory strike. And he posted some video that he took of Iran's air defense system shooting down missiles. So, he wasn't part of an Iranian propaganda operation. He was just, Joe the Kid tourist, and he saw it for himself, an eyewitness account, a contemporary eyewitness account. You know what? There's a part of me that says, I hope the United States and Israel believe their own nonsense. Go ahead, guys. Do it. Do it. Because it's only after you get punched in the face, knocked to the floor, that you're going to wake up and maybe say, we can't continue to conduct ourselves like this. We've got to change. It's like dealing with a drug addict or an alcoholic. Until they hit rock bottom, they're going to continue their abusive behavior. And frankly, the United States has got to hit rock bottom at some point before we come to our senses, because we have done nothing but promote war and conflict for the last 70 years. 70 years.
Yeah, and I want to show you a clip here from the PBD podcast. A guy named Eric Bowling was being interviewed here, and they were talking about this situation here. I put this on not so much because anything he's going to say is unusual, but because you'll see that he was asked about what he thinks about Iran and can we make a deal with them, and you'll see, I think, conviction in his face that he believes everything he's saying. But what this shows you is that there has been this systematic effort to, you can't call it anything else besides what it is, propaganda by the media. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking Republican, Democrat, that this narrative about Iran is so deeply ingrained that it's you don't even, none of the stuff that you and I are probably talking about here would even enter his ear canal without bouncing back and going straight back out. But this is what a great number of people actually believe.
I think Iran is a state sponsor of terror. They've always been. They will never not be. I think he's right. October 7th wouldn't have happened if Trump were president. I don't think Russia would have attacked Ukraine if Trump were president. I don't. Yes, don't try and prohibit them from getting a nuclear weapon at all costs. I'm not sure it's going to happen, but I think the smarter thing to do is continue the massive sanctions on that country until they. I don't know, Patrick. They're run by religious fanatics, and they hate the West and they hate everything we're about. I don't think there's any changing their mind, and it's certainly not in our lifetime. I think a tough hand with Iran is better than trying to negotiate with them.
Yeah, see, so they are just irredeemably evil. There's no reason for them to be against us. They're just this state sponsor of terror. They live to have terror, and there's no talking to them. So, Billy, a tough hand is the only thing you can do. What say you?
So let's deal with the facts. It's a lie. Iran's not the number one sponsor of terrorism. Let's look at the last 25 years. The vast majority, well over 90%, of the terrorist acts that have been recorded every year since 2001 have been carried out by Sunni religious extremists, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Al-Nusra, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, just to mention a few. And those groups have been opposed by Iran. In fact, Iran, when fighting in Syria to support Bashar al-Assad, was fighting against ISIS. We claim that we're fighting against ISIS, but there's some credible evidence to show that my old outfit, the Central Intelligence Agency, was funneling support to some of these very Islamic extremists that attacked us on 9/11. So what Iran is guilty of is they provide support to Hamas and Hezbollah. And people are, well, they're massive terrorist organizations. No, they are not. Show me the attacks. I can show you the evidence off of the Israeli Foreign Ministry's site in Israel. They have recorded every attack by Palestinians, not just Hamas, but by Palestinians across the board since August of 2000. And when I looked at the data from August of 2000 through April of 2024, during that entire time, it was like a total of 615 attacks over 25 years. And a lot of these were like somebody in a truck would run over a settler. They were more revenge attacks. We're not talking mass suicide. You've not had a single attack by Hamas or Hezbollah against the United States. And people go back, well, Hezbollah blew up with the Marine barracks in our embassy in 1983. There's evidence that wasn't Hezbollah, it was Amal, another organization. But we forget what we were doing at the time. We had a battleship parked off the coast of Lebanon, sending shells into the Bekaa Valley, killing civilians. And then we're shocked and surprised when some of these civilians get pissed off and retaliate. I mean, at some point we got to stop. But this Bowling got booted from Fox for some allegations of sexual misconduct. I'll leave it at that. He's one to go out and talk and moralize about others, but he's lying, flat out lying about Iran. Iran, yes, are they a Shia religious community? They certainly are. And do they discriminate against some other religions? Yes, they do. I'm not pretending that they're a utopia or a nirvana, but for God's sake, we don't need to be at war with them, because if we attack them, it will start an unraveling of the United States that I don't think we'll recover from.
Yeah, and I want to ask you that in the remaining time we have here. We know what happened when we went into Iraq in 2003 under the false pretenses of weapons of mass destruction and all that. We know what we ended up getting. I won't go through all the list of it, but basically we turned it into this long-term deal. It cost thousands of Americans' lives, hundreds of thousands of wounded and PTSD and traumatic brain injuries, etc., trillions of dollars. And in the end, basically handed over, made them a compliant state of the Shia in Iran that they weren't before. They were a bulwark against it. So that was the cost then.
Yeah.
What would you suggest? And you don't have a crystal ball, but what would you be worried about if we go to war with Iran today?
Well, if we go to war with Iran, so let's assume we don't put any of our aircraft into Iranian airspace. We allow the Israelis to do it. The Israeli Air Force will suffer devastating loss, and then Iran will retaliate and bomb and really hit Israel this time and destroy significant facilities and personnel in Israel. That'll then confront us with, are we going to then attack Iran? And if we do that, it's going to be involved. We're going to be facing down China and Russia at the same time, because they're going to step up and say, no. Israel attacked Iran. It wasn't the other way around. They've done it multiple times. This stops now, and we've got their back. So this could escalate. If we put our own aircraft in, then we're going to have pilots and planes shot down, and we're going to go, what the hell? We thought they didn't have any air defense left. No, there's that acronym on the internet, FAFO. FAFO.
Yeah.
And
we'll find out. So here's a hard question back. Let's say that we do, or Israel, whoever, some combination thereof, does attack into Iran, and they start trying to take out these nuclear facilities, and then Iran does, as you suggest, and shoot down Israeli planes. They fire missiles back that actually strike painful targets in Israel, which they didn't do in the 2 rounds in 2024. They specifically tried to avoid that, but this time they do. Now then you have the real dilemma. Will Israel use its nuclear weapons against Iran?
They'll be tempted, but they'll be doing so under the threat of retaliation by both Russia, China, and other states. Pakistan, even Turkey would come out in defense of Iran on this. It'd be up to the United States to prevent it. Yeah, but they very well could. Right now what's going on in Israel is tremendous political strife, chaos. Bibi Netanyahu is, he's facing almost an uprising within the military. There are retired generals as well as active duty reservists writing letters calling upon other reservists not to show up for service, not to fight, to stay out of Gaza, to stop the war in Gaza, to get the hostages released. So Netanyahu's not in a strong position, and he could do something desperate like that. I can't rule out the chance that they would turn to try to use a nuke. But I think that candidly, that's one of the contingencies that both Russia and China have been planning and talking about with Iran, weighing options. They're not going to just wait until something happens and say, "Oh, now what do we do?"
Yeah, so that just shows that underscores that there is a lot at stake here in getting this right. And if we thought the situation with Iraq was bad in 2003 and all that cost I just talked about just right off the top, the potential costs for this one for the United States are way higher. And it's something that we should not go into. And I know you've mentioned several times that you think that the Trump administration is under a lot of pressure from some pro-Israeli forces, et cetera. And he has certainly got a lot of money in his campaign to be elected, but there may come a point where he has to say, listen, I hear what you guys are saying, but we're not going to take action here that's going to harm our country. How do you see that dynamic?
Well, I think a lot of it hinges upon what the intelligence community, whether they're going to be true, honest brokers in this and tell him the truth, or if they're going to continue to feed the propaganda. I don't have a lot of confidence in Ratcliffe. I still have some hopes that Tulsi can, force them to do the right thing and be honest about it. But if Trump refuses to listen and just gets locked into his own little fantasy world, again, like if you heard him the other day, he was saying that he stopped Nord Stream 2. He did nothing of the sort. He failed in his first term to do anything to, quote, stop Nord Stream 2. He tried to slow it up a little bit. It was Joe Biden that ended Nord Stream 1 and killed one of those pipelines. But, Trump tells stories and presents facts that are really not true. He makes things up. And if he's doing that with Iran, it can have devastating consequences, because this is all going against this backdrop of what's the war with China, the tariff war with China, which we're also not positioned to win. And he thinks he's dealing with these as separate episodes of different TV shows. This is all one big show. The Chinese, the Russians, the Iran, they're looking at it as an integrated whole. This is part of a broad-based U.S. effort to try to destroy and weaken those countries. And they're saying, no, we're not going to put up with it. We're standing up for ourselves.
Yeah, and it remains to be seen how far anybody's willing to push. And that's why I say it is so vital, in my view, that we not find out, that we don't even start any of this. Let this get the best deal you can get negotiated wide. It won't make everybody happy. It'll make a lot of people in Israel unhappy, but there won't be any real consequences to it, because we'll always be able to stay safe and defend ourselves and our interest in the region. We don't need any conflict to go down that path. But listen, appreciate you coming on today, Larry. As always, it's a great pleasure to talk about these complicated issues. That's one of the reasons we like to have you on the show, because you can show how these aren't separate episodes of different shows, as you point out, but it's all different pieces that are all flowing together. And it's important to understand how they work together. Right.
And it requires a strategy to deal with it all, and we don't got one.
Well, we'll just have to hope that we can at least avoid that worst outcome. But I truly do appreciate you. Thanks very much. And by the way, if people want more Larry, be sure and go on sonar21.com because he's got a lot of stuff there that you can always find. You don't have to wait just every week to when we have him on the show.
Hey, and by the way, kudos on the video about the generals. Gary worked his magic with Westmoreland and Petraeus and Cavoli. Good job there, Gary.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah, and we really appreciate it. That was quite well received. So we appreciate you giving us the idea. So thank you very much.
Most welcome.
And we will see you. I think let's see. Yeah, we are on this afternoon. Yeah, we're going to have Che Bose on this afternoon for the first time on our show. A lot of you have been asking us to have that on. We're going to be talking about how tensions are rising over Europe's Ukraine policies and what a divided Trump team means to that. Be sure and tune in today at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll see you then on the Daniel Davis Deep Dive.